I know you write a lot about the Lord of the Rings. You were at our cigar lounge last night talking about the Lord of the Rings. When's the first time you read it or heard about it?
One of my favorite questions, Matt.
Yeah.
The first time I read The Lord of the Rings was during my second prison sentence.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, I mean, I'd always meant to read it. You know, I had friends that had read it, but it's that thick, right? It's over 1,000 pages long, and I'm busy, right? And sooner or later, one of these days, and then you find yourself in prison, right? With lots of time on your hands. It's the perfect time to pick The Lord of the Rings up. When I read it, and was blown away by it. I wasn't a Catholic. It was second prison sentence, so I was on my way. I was reading it, you know, alongside Thomas Aquinas and Chesterton and everything else. But I didn't get all the Catholic dimension. That sort of grew on me with further readings and what have you. But I realized this was a healthy world, you know, where goodness was something objectively real, where fighting for the good against the evil required great self-sacrifice, and if you didn't sacrifice yourself fighting evil, evil would triumph. Yeah. You know, so this just on this pure level, even before you start getting the Catholic theology, which permeates the whole thing, even without that, it's just that it's a good, healthy world, you know, world where the good are willing to die for the good against the powers of evil. And the powers of darkness are very powerful. So, you know, it's a real world, not a fairy story. You know, the forces of darkness are more powerful politically than the forces of light. Well, that's also true of the whole of history. Right? Look at any century, any decade, the forces of darkness, politically speaking, obviously not ultimately speaking, but politically speaking, the forces of darkness are more powerful than the forces of light. So the Lord of the Rings very much reflects the reality in that. And how do you respond to a darkness which seems so powerful it doesn't seem much point, because it's bound to win? Well, you do it by heroically being willing to die. That's what you do.
Yeah, not using it.
But yeah, not succumbing to it, not running away from it, not hiding from it.
Trying to harness its power against your enemies.
Exactly.
Wow,
yeah.
Such a brilliant story. One of the things you were saying last night, which I'd like you to talk about, is how you didn't say this, so let me say it. I like C.S. Lewis. I like his nonfiction a lot more than I like his fiction. And I don't mean to be overly critical, but sometimes it feels a little too two-dimensional. You know, like the lion is Jesus and this person is this person. And even when I read the first of his trilogy, it seemed to me like the aliens were meant to be the angels, or that there were those angel figures, rather. And I don't like that. But I love The Lord of the Rings. And one thing you said last night, which I'd love you to talk about, is how you can't do that with Tolkien's characters. You can see how Frodo was Christ-like, etc. But if you're going to try to then go, okay, so he's the Christ figure, so now everything he's done in the story, I have to somehow shoehorn into a Christ figure, it won't work. So talk more about that.
Yeah, so Tolkien is much more subtle than C.S. Lewis. You're completely correct. Lewis could not normally avoid the temptation to teach and preach. No, that's fine in a work of nonfiction if that's what you're doing. But in a work of fiction, if the reader feels that you're being preached at, you turn away. You don't. That's not why you read a story, is to be preached at, right? So, but Tolkien, again, certain figures, so Frodo as the ring bearer, as like a cross bearer, but it's only in that aspect of his character that can be seen as a Christ figure. And everything else, he's a mere hobbit of the Shire. He has his weaknesses and everything else. Insofar as Aragorn is the true king who has great powers of healing and can take the past of the dead, descend into the past of the dead, and release the dead themselves from their curse. He's a Christ figure, but only in that dimension, not in anything else. The death, resurrection, and transfiguration of Gandalf, again, but only in that dimension of the story. If you try, as you say, if you try to shoehorn, say Gandalf is the Christ figure, or Frodo is the Christ figure, or Aragorn is the Christ figure, it won't work. And Tolkien doesn't want it to work because that's not what he's doing.
What is the ring?
The ring is the nearest thing you actually get to something that signifies something synonymously, because Tolkien has the ring destroyed on March the 25th. March the 25th is, of course, as Catholics know, the Feast of the Annunciation, which is possibly the most important Christian feast. It's the moment of the incarnation, of when God becomes man, the Word becomes flesh. But it's also historically, according to tradition, the historical date of the crucifixion. So you've now got the date on which God becomes man, a date on which Christ dies for our sins. Taken together with the resurrection, that's our redemption. What's destroyed by our redemption is the power of sin. What is the one ring? The one ring is the one ring to rule them all, and in the darkness bind them. What is original sin? The one sin to rule them all, and in the darkness bind them. And the one ring and the one sin are both destroyed in the same allegorically significant date, March the 25th. And once you realize that, to wear the ring is the act of sin. And if we wear the ring habitually, we Golemize ourselves. We become shriveled wrecks, addicts. People talk about the freedom, right, to become addicted. I mean, how absurd! It's the freedom to become a slave, right? And then you've got the ring bearer, the one who carries the weight of sin without sinning, right? That's the cross bearer. So the ring is the key to unlocking all of the deep theological and philosophical dimensions of the Lord of the Rings.
Well, I love what you said about how the ring, or how sin golemizes us. Can you spend some time talking about that?
Yeah, I mean, so St. Paul talks about slavery to sin, and we live in an age now of pride, the pride movement. That basically that you do what you want, right, and no one has the right to stop you doing what you want. These people are advocating basically addiction to sexual or other physical pleasures that turns them into addicts. They're miserable wrecks, who becoming more miserable wrecks for every year they succumb to the power of the sin or the ring, the vice, the pride. Because what is the first and worst sin? Is pride, right? And the first and the worst of sins. That's what leads to the one sin to lead them all in the darkness by them is pride. So we have the pride movement now. And I love, by the way, that's the name they give to themselves, because at least it's an accurate name. In our day and age, there's so much misuse of words.
Yeah.
But pride is exactly what they are, and we have to pin them to it. We have to, of course, define what we mean, what is meant by pride, and define what is meant by love, which is inseparable from sacrificing yourself for the beloved. You don't do your own thing. You don't sacrifice others for the self. You sacrifice yourself for others. It's the difference between love and humility and pride. So again, that's the power. You see, when you look at a pride parade, you're looking at a parade of golems, which is why really we should be praying for them. I mean, we have to resist them, right? And Gollum had to be resisted, right? But in the end, they didn't kill Gollum, right? They could have killed him, but if they had killed him, things wouldn't have worked out as well. So we're meant to be praying for the conversion of these people, for the healing of these people, not merely wishing to shoot them.
Yeah, that is a part of the story that surprises a lot of people. I feel like if I was to write the story, then you'd just have Frodo go to the edge of Mount Doom and throw it in. But that isn't what happened. What happened? Yeah,
so I mean, if you read The Lord of the Rings, you get. I was very annoyed and frustrated when you get to that point, because Tolkien doesn't allow us to rush, right? This is a pre-technological age. When we're traveling from A to B, we're doing it on foot, right? It's slow. It takes 900 pages to get to Mount Doom, right? At walking pace. And then we climb the mountain slowly, we trudge up the mountain slowly, and then he's there. He's on the precipice. The fires of Mount Doom are down below. He just has to cast the ring into the fire, and victory is won. And you're waiting, right? You want to cheer him on. This is the great climactic moment, and he refuses. He claims the ring for himself, making him a loser, making him a traitor. And so our hero becomes the miserable loser. And you get angry with him. And then, of course, you go a bit deeper and you think it's not Frodo's fault, it's Tolkien's fault, because Tolkien's made Frodo do it, right?
And he made me read it.
And made me read it, exactly. You dragged me 900 pages for this, and how dare you, And then you think a bit more deeply, right? And you think, there's something really profound going on here, because Gollum is who arrives at that moment and struggles and bites Frodo's ring finger off, gets the ring, and then falls with the ring into the fire. Therefore, the victory is won by accident, right? Not by the will of Frodo. And of course, the key thing about Christian theology is we cannot triumph over the power of evil, the power of sin, through the triumph of our own will, right? We can't just, that's the sort of Pelagianism. You just listen to what Jesus says and you do it, you get to heaven. You don't need grace. You don't need sacraments. You don't need church. It's just the triumph of your will. It's a heresy. And so if Frodo had thrown it in, it would be Frodo's triumph, right, over the ring. The Frodo's triumph over sin. But Gollum emerges. Now, why is he there? At the beginning of the story, Frodo says, I wish Uncle Bilbo had destroyed that miserable creature when he had the chance. And Gandalf says, I wish Uncle Bilbo had destroyed that miserable creature when he had the chance. It's a pity that he didn't. And Gandalf says, pity? It was pity that stayed his hand. And then later in the story, Frodo has the chance to destroy Gollum, to have Gollum killed. And he says, now I do see him, I do pity him. And he spares him. And later on, Sam also pities him. So 3 separate occasions, the 3 hobbits have triumphed in the most important way of doing the will of God, and the most difficult commandment that Christ gives us, to love our enemy. And they all succeed in loving their enemy, and because of that, their enemy is there at the end. If they killed him, he wouldn't have been, to deliver everyone from the enemy, right? So again, acts of love, acts of obedience to the commandments of God, laying down our lives for not just our neighbors, but our enemies, is the way to defeat the power of evil. Love is the only way to defeat evil, not hatred, not violence, love.
Yeah, wow, that's great. I remember in the initial pages it talking about Gollum and how it reminded me of a porn addict, the way they were describing Gollum, because I've been there back in the day. Something about how like there was nothing that could satisfy him, like, and there were no more secrets, something like that. Just empty earth or something like that. Like he had thought that there was going to be nourishment and that which would satisfy, but there was nothing there. And sin is like that. You know, you go because it promises you adventure, promises you mystery, promises you power, and then once you've bitten into it, you realize, damn it.
Yeah,
like it's crippled me, and there's nothing there.
Yeah,
it's not that it's just there's nothing there. It's that there's nothing there, and now I'm less of who I was.
Right. You're shriven. You're Gollumizing yourself. I mean, again, the word satisfaction comes from the Latin word satis, which means enough. The thing about an addict, by definition, an addict never has enough. An addict always not just wants more. An addict needs more. That's slavery, right? And you're never, ever satisfied because you never, ever have enough.
Men, have you checked out Exodus 90 lately? If you've heard of Exodus 90 before, you're probably thinking of cold showers and Lent, but the Exodus 90 app offers so much more. It's the #1 freedom app to help you become the man you were created to be. I've been following along with the app's daily scriptures, reflections, and disciplines. It's really fantastic. It offers a powerful take on the spiritual life for men today. Download the Exodus 90 app today and join men from around the world for Advent, which starts on December 1st. Experience Advent differently this year by breaking out of the religion of the world. Join the man of Exodus 90 and Monsignor James Shea, president of the University of Mary, who is the spiritual guide for Advent this year on the Exodus 90 app. We will rediscover the hope that God lays out for us in the coming of his Son into the world. Go to exodus90.com/Matt to learn more about Advent on the Exodus 90 app. That's exodus90.com/Matt to join men from around the world this Advent starting December 1st.